Today I'm going to take you on a really cool journey. I'm going to show you how I went from door-to-door music lessons and sort of worked my way all the way up through the different buildings and places that I hired to get to my dream music school that grew to 2,000 plus students. So we're going to go out on the road. I'm going to show you these places, and this is from a video that I filmed a little while ago, so I might look a little bit different, but you're going to love it. And before I throw you to that video right now, I want to just let you know, if you love these studio tours in our Building Music School library, I'll give you a free link down below to come check it out. There are stacks and stacks of incredible studio tours of music schools from all over the world inside our BAM Squad program. So if you go to module 2, so get a free trial, go check it out, go to module 2 and check out the studio tours section. You're going to see incredible tours of really massive and amazing music schools, medium size, small size, online studios, solo at home studios, creative places where people are doing things in shipping containers and music buses. Incredible stuff. And so that's all happening in the library. Click the link, grab a free trial. Just remember, you only get one free trial, but you should stick around anyway. It's pretty amazing. But for now, today, I'm going to show you this old video where I show you the journey that took me from out on the road teaching door to door to finding my own little spaces to hire to eventually getting the dream building. So if that's a goal for you, to get a dream building, I hope you find this inspirational. There's a lot of educational tips and advice in this video. So grab a pen and paper, take some notes as you watch, and any great comments and questions, you let me know down below. Well, here we are at our first location, and we're talking about going door to door because this is where I started, and this is one of the very first streets that I started on, teaching on a house further down the road there. And door-to-door lessons were a lot of fun because it was really easy to get started, because who wouldn't want the tutor coming to their house? It's so convenient. You get to stay warm, stay in your house, lesson comes to you, you don't have to drive anywhere. So it was really easy to grow very fast. But what happens is that you end up obviously having to drive between lessons, and that can take 10, 15, 30 minutes sometimes. And so your timetable ends up growing very fast, and all your time ends up being evaporated because you just can't fit any more people in time frames where you can be traveling within a time that people are prepared to have lessons. One other benefit though is that often families are very hospitable, and so you get a few other cups of coffee and biscuits and the occasional meal, so that is a pro. But what happened for me is I filled up my timetable to the point where I couldn't fit anyone else in by driving around, and so I needed to figure out what I would do next, and I needed to find a space that I could hire and have everyone come to that space. And so we're going to move on now, and I'm going to show you that space where I went to next and invited everyone to have to stop having lessons at their home and have to come to me, which was a challenge in its own, but we'll pick that up soon. So we're going to head off to the next site, and I'll show you where I went after doing door-to-door lessons. Well, after much searching around and trying to find where is a building in this general area that I'm teaching that I could rent a space, I stumbled across this place, which is a big race course. And so they only use the facilities, I don't know, a handful of times a year for big races. Apart from that, they just have heaps of old buildings, some nicer buildings, and they have functions, and they have what look to be abandoned buildings. And so I just went in and knocked on the door and talked to a nice lady and said, hey, I'm a drum teacher and I'm looking for a space. Is there any chance I could rent something? And they were really generous, and they charged me just per half hour that I would teach. And so I just had a spreadsheet, and I just was really honest and said, this is what I've taught today, and here's my money, etc. And so this place is pretty unique, and it just reminds me that if you're in this stage where you're going door to door, or you're needing to find something else than the space you're currently in, you just got to look around, because you might stumble across something like this, and you've just got to have the guts to go and knock on the door, have a conversation, and sort of sell yourself. So this is where the next part of my journey happened, and then this opportunity didn't last for that long, because they ended up having to renovate the building that I was having a little teaching room in, and so I then had to find something else. So I started the process again, figuring out what else could I find? But of course I'd grown a bit more, so a little bit more money to play with, and now I needed to find my own space that I didn't have to just go in and rent per lesson, but that I could teach in sort of permanently. So the benefit with this situation was that I just paid per half-hour slot that I used, but then again that room wasn't my own to fully decorate and sort of have a space where I was permanently set up. I had to bring my gear, set it up, pack it down at the end and leave. And so not the perfect solution, but it was better than going to everyone's houses. And of course not everyone wanted to leave from their house and come to see me. We're just going to wait for this car for 10 seconds. Alright, they're gone. So I was just saying that not everyone wanted to drop having me come to their house and come to this location, and so I still had a bit of a messy situation where I was going to some houses and having quite a few people coming to me. But we're going to go check out the next location, because at that point I just stopped going to anyone's house, and I had my own space that was set up, had everything I needed, and so at that point going door to door was over. So let's go check out the next space that I found. Well, here we are at the next location, and this site used to be an old war hospital that was bought by some people that turned it into a large sort of camping site and an event site for weddings, conferences, funerals, whatnot. And again, much like the racecourse we just saw, there's lots of old buildings around, and I was lucky enough to be offered one of these old buildings, and it was this little shed in the corner here, and we'll show some photos of what it looked like when I first came along, and you'll see that we had to do a whole bunch of working bees, and it was pretty hideous looking. And I rallied a whole bunch of my friends together, and I probably only spent, I don't know, a few $100s or something buying some egg cartons, some wood. Lots of things got donated. My friends found nails in their sheds and brought them along, and we all got our tools, and we put together this site with this little stage, a drum room, and I was able to teach at this fixed location. And through here you can see there's plenty of parking for parents to come down, and this was a great little location. Now I was in one place, and I stayed here for many years, and as you'll see soon, I actually was lucky enough to move around the site. As they renovated different buildings and things, I sort of got shuffled around a bit, and so once I built that strong connection with the people here, I was sort of in with a grin, and they let me stay here for many years. So this place was a massive blessing. But again, just like the racecourse, you have to sort of, sniff these places out, and you have to get in your car, you have to look around, you have to just find places, knock on the door, talk to people, meet them. And if you've got those great people skills and you can build those relationships, sometimes a relationship like what we had here can last for, gosh, I don't know how many years we were here. Could have been 5-6 years across the time. So it's pretty special. So this shed, it's all been done up now. You can see the shots there where they've tidied it up. Did not look like this at all. But obviously I was able to teach Monday through to Saturday in this space, and then again I reached a point where I couldn't grow any further, and so I was doing a lot of gigs, and I decided that, hey, I don't actually want to teach Saturdays, and I don't want to teach Fridays because I'm gigging. So I was teaching Monday to Thursday, and I got to a point where I had a big waiting list. I might have been teaching maybe 35 students, and then I had a waiting list of about 15 students. And you might even be in that place now where you're maxed out, you can't do any more, and you've got a waiting list. People are saying, hey, I want to learn with you, and you just physically can't fit them in. And so when I was in that position, I had to figure out, well, what am I going to do? Because I've got this waiting list, I can't fit anyone else in, and so that became the decision to start a music school. And so what I did is I took my top student who was off to university to study the drums, and I said, hey, I'm going to give you the waiting list of students, I'm going to pay you this amount per lesson, and I'm going to build another little room which I had arranged, and I'll show that to you now. And we built this extra little room, and I went and got a little loan from the bank and paid it back, and he started teaching in that room a couple days a week. And then we had Good Time Drum Academy, just teaching the drums, and we built up from there. So I'll just show you this little room which is behind us, and you'll see it's pretty old and crappy, but it did the job. So this little box that you see, that used to just be like totally bare. It was just some, I don't know what it was, some sort of telephone box thing with all sorts of wires, and it literally had no walls. So all the cladding you see with all the plywood and the outside, that's been purchased, and I can't remember exactly how much it cost, but I went to the bank and I might have got a loan for, I don't know, like $3,000 maybe, sounds about right. And we carpeted it, put you know, egg cartons on the walls, built the outside, got the electrical work sorted so it all worked and it was warm. Still doesn't look like much, but I was able to now house another person teaching for a few days a week, and then eventually we grew with these two rooms, these two locations. And so pretty dingy down here. It wasn't very flash at all, but we were building something that was exciting, and pardon me, and kids were excited to come along, and they started to meet not just myself but the other tutor, whose name was Nathan. And so there was a bit of community starting to form. And of course we started to do end of term concerts, end of year concerts, and kids were all getting to know each other, that they were part of this Good Time Drum Academy. Now I guess you can naturally figure out what happened next. Well, we filled these rooms, and then we had a waiting list, and so we had another decision to make. And so we ended up having these 2 rooms down here, and then getting this other little house on site. And so I'm going to show you this other little house, and you'll see something interesting has happened to it. But we maintained these lessons happening at the same time, and we had this other little house. And in this house we started to add piano lessons, guitar lessons, singing lessons, things that weren't noisy like the drums down here. So I'll show you this little house next. Well, here we are at the place where we used to have the little house I mentioned before. And so in this house I was able to live in one of the rooms, and then there were 2 other rooms, and so in those rooms we had the quieter instruments like guitar, vocals, piano, things like that. And just as we record, it's a little bit noisy because on the property here there's cars going up and there are people chopping down trees and all sorts. But this house was on the main driveway of this property, and you'll notice a bit of a theme as we've gone through, that I seem to always stumble into these opportunities where they had intentions for ripping these things down and redoing and revamping things, and I always managed to somehow get in early, where they would tell me, hey, we're going to rip this down in so many months or so many years, so you've got, you know, this long to go. And I would say, that's great, I'll do that, and I'll figure it out when that time comes. But often they would say I've got this long, but I would end up with this long, and so that was really great. And in that process I was able to pay really cheap rent towards the spaces we were using. So anyway, we had the 2 sites running, drums over where I showed you before, the quieter instruments over here, and so we had this little house, and as you can see, this is where it was, and now you can see there is no house there. So they have totally ripped it down, and it has become the new driveway, because obviously we have talked about it before in our videos that first impressions count. And so the first impression of this property was this really ugly old house, and so of course, and part of their long-term plan was to rip it down. But before they did it, I was lucky to be able to teach here for I don't know how many years, that might have been a couple years. And then again we went to the next stage where we had those rooms filled, the other rooms I showed you filled, and a waiting list again. And so we needed to go up one more building, and thankfully there was one more building that came along here before we ended up moving off site, and I'm going to show you that next building that we moved into now. So here is the next building that we ended up in, and this one still exists, which is pretty cool. and this was called the Homestead, and it was part of this big wider old war hospital, and I don't know exactly what the room was for, but it was freezing, and so we had a fireplace in there, but it would still be a hot summer's day outside, and we'd still be freezing inside even with the fire going, so it's nice to be out of there. But it was a pretty amazing building when we first moved in, because we went from having, you know, the 4 rooms to now we had this building with 8 rooms plus I think 2 offices and a waiting area, and everything was in one place, which just made that whole culture, that whole vibe so much cooler, because everyone's starting to know each other. They get to sit in the lounge and meet and talk and connect, and that's what you want to build, that community. Well, in that process of moving from the drum sites and the little house into this one building, we went from being Good Time Drum Academy to Good Time Music Academy, and so obviously we started to build that community, that sense of really belonging to something, because we're in one location, and that was super exciting for us, going from, you know, being split around the place, and especially before that having, you know, driving to houses and you know, the 2 sheds, just everything coming into one place was the coolest feeling. Everyone felt part of one school, and we not only got traction just here in terms of providing a better experience for everyone, but we got more traction out in the community, because now people perceived us as this one building, this actual hub of awesomeness. Things were taking place, and it wasn't just spread out all around the place. So that was really cool. And then from here, what happened is that we kept this location, and we started going to a multi-site model, and we'll walk you through some of that, but I'll just talk a little bit now. We ended up opening a second location at a place called Petone, which is about 15 minutes south from where we are. And that site there, we ended up getting a commercial lease. And so obviously this is still a commercial lease, but we're sort of tucked away in, I don't know, between 2 cities, and it's kind of farmland-ish, but it is a main road that people drive past. But this next place that we'll show you, we were out on a main road, commercial building amongst other shops, and really had that drive-by visibility, so that was really cool. So now we had 2 locations, and so now we're paying quite a big rent at that you know, shop front place, and then we're paying the rent back here as well. So we've got 2 locations going on, and they were going reasonably well, but now we've diluted the culture of the team, and so we have these 2 sites about the same size, but at any one time you've got one team at one place, another team at another place, and of course everyone's starting to think about oh, this place is closer to my house, so I only want to work at this one. And so we had those sorts of issues we had to think about. But we started thinking, and we probably got a little bit cocky, hey, we've got 2 sites running, maybe we can do a third, maybe we can do a fourth. And so we did branch out. We branched out to a 3rd site, and that was in Wellington City, and you can see some footage there of the site. And at this site in the city, we partnered with another youth organisation, and so they had this building and they weren't able to fill it all the time, so we went back to that model of paying per half-hour spot at this location. And so now we had the 3 locations, and now our team was you know, split up even further, so there was more perhaps more work opportunities, it felt like, but we were scattered thin, and it was really hard and frustrating for me to feel in control of all of it, because I'm having to split my time around, and I can be at one site and a drama could be happening at another site, and I need to get there. But we went even further, and we got a 4th location. And so let me tell you about this 4th location. So this 4th location was at a new church, and they had moved into a building they were hiring, and of course they were only meeting you know, once a week there, maybe for some evening meetings, and so we were able to use 2 or 3 rooms to operate, and we just had to pay a small fee for the rooms that we used. And so as you can see, we had like 2 leases plus 2 sort of pay-as-you-go scenarios happening. So very, you know, sort of more high risk with the committed leases, but very low risk with those pay-as-you-go sort of schemes. Now, we'd very carefully and strategically positioned our 4 centres around the 4 main parts of our city here, Wellington, and so we had a really good spread across the whole city. And so in terms of our our search engine optimization and Google Places and all that stuff. When you searched for music lessons, we were number one all the time, showing up everywhere. But what happened is we had this site at the main Silverstream site, the old War Hospital. We had our shopfront site, and those two sites were going really great. And we might have had, say, maybe 500, maybe 600 students between those two sites. And then at the other two sites, they were quite small. They might have only had maybe 50 to 70 at each. And so we were portraying this image on our website that it was this amazing, crazy, fun place to go. And at two of the locations, it was that. You walked in, there was heaps of people, it was just super fun and engaging. And the other two, Site 3 and 4, they did not have that feeling at all. It was still okay, but as they were new and small and starting, even if you had 70 students at one, when that's scattered across a week, it wasn't that energetic and exciting there. And so I started to feel like I wasn't enjoying this multi-site idea because the culture is thinning out. We're portraying something that doesn't quite exist yet at two of those locations. And we got up to about 800 students all combined across these four sites. And then we had a bunch of different sort of staffing things change, and I decided I would much rather have one amazing site than four multi-sites, because I wanted one venue where everyone came to, it was worth driving to, and it was just amazing. And here at this camp, Silverstream Retreat, the old War Hospital, they gave us notice and they said, hey, this building you're in, time's up, we're going to need it for something, we're going to have to start renovating it. Now, we've filmed it today and it's still here, and so in the end they changed their mind, and it hasn't been renovated yet, so they're still going to do it in the future. But that gave us the decision we had to make about changing locations. And so at this critical time, we had four locations. Our main big one that we started at said, hey, we're going to have to shut you down and kick you out. It's time. And that was totally fine. We weren't too worried because we'd been there for 5 or 6 years. We'd gone through all those different locations I've showed you, and we had done really well working there. So we had to make this decision, and it was a big leap of faith. I decided if we had one location, I reckoned that the amount of stress that it would cut down and the improvement in culture and that feeling of being part of something, if everyone was at one site, I believe that would be worth shutting down the other sites in order to do. And we had a lot of debate about that. And maybe you're even operating multi-sites, and you know the stress I'm talking about, having multiple sites. And if you get a site with, say, 50 people or 70 people, you can't necessarily afford a manager in that site to make sure it runs smooth, because you've only got so much money coming in. And so we had those sorts of situations where someone would be managing a couple sites and having to drive between, and that wasn't perfect either. So all these things came to a head, and I had to make that leadership decision. No, we're cutting down from 4 to 1, and it's going to be an amazing site. And that is what led us to the building we are in today. And so we're going to go and check that out now. Well, we're back at our building, the one that we're currently in, and this building is the one that we shrunk down to from 4 sites to 1. Now, you know how I said we had that theory that we would have a better, amazing location if we shrunk to 1? Well, it worked. We had 700-800 students, as I said, with the 4 sites. We shrunk down to 1, and within 6 months, we shot up to 900 students. And so what an amazing effect. Going from 4 sites, you think chopping down 3 of them and going to 1, you would be shrinking significantly. Well, we did shrink quite a bit because quite a few people weren't prepared to come all the way to 1 site. And it worked. It grew at the same time and just expanded up to 900. And from there we've grown and grown, 1,200, 1,500, on and on it goes. And we're working towards, at this point in time, trying to stretch for the 2,000 students per week mark. And so in this building here, we'll show you some shots. You can take a look. We've got I think about 14 practice rooms. We've got a bunch of offices. I've got my own little office here. We've built a big waiting room where we can have a little stage. You can see students are able to perform on the stage. At different times we've tried having a little shop. We've got our own little merchandise room. We've got a big storage facility. We've got car parks for music buses and staff. All sorts of crazy things, and you can see there's just so much amazing stuff that students can be a part of, and you can see the community that's built here by being in this exciting, colourful place. And we're by no means finished. We've got a long way to go. There's lots of decorating to do, and as you guys know, it's an expensive job, and so we'll just continue to get better and better. But my opinion of going from the 4 multi-sites down to 1 is that it was one of the smartest decisions that we ever made, and it has worked out amazingly. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have to do multi-sites, because you might be able to do it a lot better than me, and you might be able to handle having, 4 amazing sites, or 5, or however many you want to stretch to. But my personal take was that having this one site that's absolutely cranking, everyone in one place, is just the coolest experience. So there is a bit of a tour of all the 4 sites, and I hope you've enjoyed that. And you can see it's been a long and quite messy journey, but it's been pretty exciting along the way to have to grow from school to school and site to site, and have to think strategically around what we are going to do next. Where are we going to find the next premises? And that is a stressful time sometimes, but it is all pretty much in the rearview mirror. It's gone now, and it's great to be finally in a dream building. But of course, we have to keep thinking bigger, and so there's another dream building in mind for maybe 5-10 years down the track when we get much bigger. So we're always thinking bigger. Well, let's head back to the studio and let's move on.